Hi everyone, I'm here with Doreena Durbin and we're going to talk for a while about something that we discovered we share in our life journey, which is the question of spiritual work, meditation. When we were talking, we discovered that we have a lot of similarity in our ideas, even in the timing, in the, you could call it astrological timing or life timing. We were doing similar things in this area around the same time. And I also want to start by saying that Doreena actually has taken this to a point where she's put together a book. I'll let her explain a little more, but she has quite a background in this area. And one of the reasons that I think this is important is that meditation in a chart has, in terms of signs, the literal sign that most closely associates the meditation would be Pisces, which is Doreena's sun sign, in a way, unsurprisingly. Although lots of people find that connection through maybe not the sun position, but it could be the moon or other planets. Sometimes a single planet in that sign can do it. Or the 12th house, 12th sign, which is the natural place of Pisces as well. And this is an area that can be the 12th sign, and Pisces to some extent can be a major vulnerability in that the 12, if you go on Google or some kind of research engine and you ask for meanings of the 12th house, you get things like the place of self-undoing, a place of loss. It's a complicated house, but if a person is meditating regularly, if they're doing what I think of as the high end of that house, you can offset a lot of that and even turn it into a major asset. Like, for example, a person can have a certain level of fear in their psyche, and this is something that with meditation you can turn it around and literally turn it into a power or a form of skill that changes the energy completely. So long story short, is the idea is that meditation is just a really powerful area of experience. So we'll start there, and I'll ask Doreena to tell us a little bit about her past experience with it, what drew her to it, what she thinks makes it important, and so on. So there you go.
Okay, thank you, Andre. First of all, for inviting me to collaborate with you. I'm so grateful and honored that you asked me to do this. I have about 45 years, maybe getting closer to 50 years of practicing and teaching meditation. Um, so I do know a little bit, quite a bit, I guess. I am an expert. Um, and it's something that I realized that I needed it when I was going through stressful times in my life back in the 70s, raising two kids. But I was able to meet a guru back in those days that kind of put me on the path. Garajananda Yogi is his name. There's a picture of him. And so that got me started. I was just very surprised in how quickly I began to notice changes within myself, such as awareness. Awareness is the first thing that you notice, and at least I did. And being a Pisces, an empath, I pick up certain subtle nuances throughout my life, and but the one thing that I wanted to say is that because of my years of practice in meditation, I've had the ability to teach in medical schools, to physicians, medical students, um, and many individual aspirants, but also groups of people that want to learn these skills, these practices. Most recently, about 4 or 5 years ago, I started teaching at a prison, men's prison near Dallas, Texas. And if anybody would have told me I was going to be doing that, I would go, "What? In Texas and Dallas? This is the Bible Belt." And yet, here I am, and it's so successful. I actually wrote a book about, I'll talk about that later, but this book, Get an Inner Life, Meditate, um, four or five of the inmates have written their stories in here of how my teaching has helped them, uh,
Mm,
just in the prison setting, but it spreads. There's a ripple effect. When you teach one person, that person, the energy becomes more refined and more heightened, and the that spreads. So you walk into a room, for example, if you know that you're going to go visit somebody and you knock on the door, they have these big smiles on the face, but you can feel, I can, that they just had a fight. There was that negative impression left,
mm,
and it comes through. You can't hide that. Um, that's the kind of thing that happens when you start to meditate and you get into your inner self. That, my guru would always say, I am only here to teach you how to find your own inner guru. From there on, you're on your own. And so I always thought about that. Yes, I have developed. It's a growth. When you're in life, you're growing constantly. You're learning. And if you're not, you're dead. You
mm.
know,
Very true. Yeah, very,
that's
very, very true. Yeah, so now let me ask you this: what do you? I know that both of us connected with transcendental meditation in the '70s, and so how do you, if you were to describe to someone like the essence, like what's happening, like what are you doing exactly? You're doing this thing, and the technique. What is it to you in simple terms, so that someone that is not familiar with this would be able to understand what we're
so.
talking about?
Yes, so the one thing that happens, you have to get your own energy into alignment. And when you sit down to meditate, the very first thing that happens, people think, oh, you're supposed to have a blank mind. You're not supposed to have thoughts, that's meditation. Guess what? That's the last thing. Your mind, we have 60, 70,000 thoughts a day as human beings. And so we're always on the outside here, focused out there. The purpose is to go within, to find that peace and silence that we all have, that we can connect with. And guess that's our connection with divinity. So when we do that, and when we sit down and we say, okay, I'm going to meditate, and I for the first 20 years or 25 years, I meditated twice a day. I was very regular. And then, as the years go by, you might do once a day, but I know I have it. It's something I can always turn to. If there's chaos around the world, it's a great idea to have meditation practices because you can stop yourself, still your mind. The way you do that is when you put your attention on, let's say, your breathing or a mantra, then you're able to, thoughts will come and thoughts will go, but then you're able to let them go and realize, look, I'm not meditating. I'm just thinking thoughts. And when that occurs and that first thought hits you that I am only thinking thoughts, bring your attention back to the mantra or the breathing. And well, now I can go into that state of meditation in seconds because your breathing slows down substantially and becomes very still, very silent, and that breath is powerful. So when we get into that relaxed state, that's when we'll sit there for that 20 minutes and we meditate, and then at the end we come out and there is a shift, an energetic shift that takes place in the body when you do this because you've taken all your crazy thoughts and your mental machinations and physical ailments, and you're not focusing on that. You're focusing on the breath or the mantra. So that's basically what you're doing. And after that 20 minutes, you feel so much better. You walk out of the room and people say, what did you do? Wow. They feel it. People can feel it on a very subtle. energetic level.
So when you started doing this, if you can remember, do you remember this sense that as you started to learn to meditate and you were practicing regularly, was one of the things you were experiencing less reactivity to things in your life? Like, for example, noticing, oh, I'm about to get angry, or something that would like he described it as basically as awareness, which again, that can seem that's a word, and people may wonder, well, what does that mean? It's almost like having this light that warns you or says to you, look out, this is about to happen. So then you might still get angry, but you might not. Maybe at first it's like 50-50, but then as time passes, it becomes less and less likely. Was that something you experienced relatively early on?
Absolutely. Absolutely. What happens is, and I teach the inmates this too, if somebody triggers you, I even use that word in the prison. And when I said it, I said, oh, maybe I shouldn't be saying that word. But then they kind of laughed and we got over it. But
Yeah.
what happens is if somebody says something to you that's mean, that really you take to heart, it just lives inside of you, it seems like. But the idea of meditation is you're learning how to let go of thoughts. So when those things happen, it teaches you this idea of let it go. It's not serving you to hold on to it. Let it go. It's not that important. And what happens is you can feel it in your body the second that you're triggered, that you get all off balance and everything, you feel it. And most of the time, I can catch it in time and say, okay, let me know. If it's something on the outside that's really a car accident, for example, and I've experienced a couple of times where those things occurred, and that the adrenaline rush, you get that adrenaline, and then you have to get your body back into that alignment, homeostasis, not being so out there and upset. So when you do this, and the more you practice it, the more that you'll notice that, oh, let that guy say that mean thing to me again. It's not going to bother me. And it doesn't. It's like it just goes away. But there are some things that we have as human beings, impressions in our minds, energetic, maybe some experiences that we had in childhood or whenever, but those impressions remain for quite a while. So meditation helps to kind of bring them up to the surface, let them go, you know. So yes, there are many times throughout the everybody's life and the days, depending on what your work is, what your job is, your families, all your stressors, but we need ways to find out how we can come back to that divine inner self and feel the peace. We feel the love. We feel it helps us to become more compassionate and understanding with others and animals.
Yeah, that's so interesting because what it brought up in my mind is one of the many spiritual teachers, gurus that I studied. And this guy made a point that the problem is when we personalize everything, we turn it into, if someone says to you, you're stupid, they insult you. So then your ego, your sense of self, you get angry. The way he put it was, if you have enough presence of mind to feel the trigger and then realize, nah, there's nobody here, just notice the energy. So in actual fact, it wakes you up, and now you turn it into a spiritual energy. So for example, how you were saying, someone walks in a room, and if they're not in a great state, you can feel it. If they're in a better state, you feel that. Everybody has like an atmosphere. So in theory, if you're in a room and people are really fighting, you can feel the adrenaline, but adrenaline wakes you up. It's not personal. It's just, wow, there's a lot of energy in here. If you have that kind of skill to just turn it into an impersonal, it's just energy. It has nothing to do with me. Although, of course, that's hard to realize sometimes when the insult is directly toward you. You have to have a lot of presence of mind. But that's the whole idea, that meditation is like the training of presence of mind, because that's what you're doing. You're just right here, right here. Mind wants to go somewhere else. Bring it back, bring it back. And they probably said the same thing to you as I was told when I was trained. It was, okay, so the mantra, you repeat it. Then if you notice that your mind drifts, just gently come back. No problem. Don't make a big deal. Don't stress, because the whole idea is that just return. And then this returning becomes more and more natural as the days are passing, so that, as you said a little bit earlier, now I can go into it a lot more quickly. At first, maybe you might do a 20-minute session where you start out in San Francisco and then you spend most of the meditation in Los Angeles in a dream. And then you come back, right? But as time passes, you do that less and less and less. And this goes to, in the astrology model, this is the interplay of the two big archetypes, Saturn and Jupiter, so that what you're doing is you're refining that focus more and more and more. That's Saturn. Also, Saturn is the planet that says, none of this works if you don't show up. You gotta show up, to even do it in the first place. It's a work planet. But Jupiter is the result, meaning you find that really beautiful, relaxed, divine state, right? And so the two are working together in the best possible way. And here's where sometimes a person can diminish the value of meditation, because they'll say, well, okay, that's great. You're doing that. And okay, you're relaxed. But, I have all these problems in my life and it's too much. I can't do it now. I have no time. Here's the thing. When you do it really well, it doesn't just affect your spiritual life. It affects your total life, meaning Jupiter is both the planet of deep meditation on one level, and it's a very prosperity connected planet in another, like a person's literal money life, material life is affected by Jupiter. So a meditator is more likely always to do better in that realm as well, right? And that, particularly for America, should be a motivational statement of some kind, right? Of how valuable it is to do it. And the other thing I'll say too, and you probably will agree with this, that back in the 70s, it was around, but it was relatively, in the background. Now it's really front and center. I mean, now you have not just meditators, but you have neurosurgeons, people that are, neuroscientists saying, no, yeah, this is really, really important stuff, because we can see when we measure brain activity, nervous system activity, that something really important and powerful and helpful happens. They'll tell you directly in what people would say is a more scientific, explanation for what is happening. Yeah. Anyway, I'll stop there. I'll let you comment on that.
Yeah, the one thing, first of all, I wanted to say that I did transcendental meditation like Andre did 1 year, and then something wasn't just didn't feel right to me. And my teacher from TM said, I started with this new group called the American Meditation Society. Would you like to try this if this isn't working? I said, absolutely. And I thought, okay, I did that a year. I'll give this 6 months. If it doesn't work, I'm out of here. It's now going on 47 years later, so I guess it worked.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing I want to say, there's many, many different types of meditation. Meditation is all around the world. There's, in yoga studios, you're in the asana position, one of the yoga on the floor, lying on the floor, and you might have the instructor giving, talking you through a guided meditation. But the way that I don't need music to meditate, I don't need, this certain kind of space. I've meditated in airplanes and everywhere. It doesn't matter. The noise factor becomes like a thought. If you are meditating and a plane goes by and the plane goes by. So you don't focus on that sound of the plane, because that sound is going to go. So let it come like you do thoughts, let it come, let it go. So all these different types of meditation around the world, people say, well, how does this work? Well, it's actually been scientifically proven that there's a definite link between, now we have this quantum field of all possibilities. So we are our planet, and Andre can talk about this, our world seems to have sped up so much that we're almost like, wait for me. I can't catch on. Um, I need a minute or two. I can't go that fast, but that's what's happening. And we can either say, I can't do this, and we check out, or we say, well, I'm here and I'm here to help uplift our planet, our world, and our people. We need this good energy to share with our humanity. That's what we are here to do is learn life lessons. And how can you do that if you're always worried about what this bill you have to pay? I got to pay my rent, I got to do this and that. It's just amazing how quickly this is catching on now, how fast. It's really just phenomenal. So when I first started, and I would have, I worked at a university and in the College of Medicine, and I worked with surgeons, and they would come by my desk and they'd see my little picture or something, and they knew that I wasn't like everybody else. I was different. I've always been different, even as a kid growing up. But there was something that they would say, what are you into? What are you doing? And then one day, somebody says, you're meditating, aren't you? That's what you're doing. I said, yes. And then the word got around, the other surgeons learned it. Some of them used to tease me, but then years later, I'd be walking down the hallway and one of them would come up to me, hey, Doreen, remember that meditation stuff you used to do? Can you teach me that? So that's when I started teaching the doctors too. Um, so yeah, it just people can feel something is different. They can feel it, depending on how sensitive they are. Does that kind of answer that?
Yeah, yeah, no, no, for sure. Yeah, this is the thing that someone that is not doing it, they're really just not focusing on the subtlety of that. But once you start to do it, it just becomes more and more obvious. 100% that's what's going on. And the only thing is how much value do you assign to it, right? But one thing that practically every teaching, every guru, every religion, really, pretty much, if you look at the essence, they pretty much tell you that our nature, our true nature, in the essential, deep place, is just peaceful happiness. It's always like that, but then we move out of that into, call it the world, call it our concerns. We move out of that all the way. I mean, you could be in a literally crazy space where you're all sped up and, and feeling nuts, literally. And once you just go the other way, you figure out what to do with that thing that was making you crazy. You just figure it out. I know it sounds to another person, maybe, oh, come on, that just seems Pollyanna. No, it's absolutely true. If you find your natural calm center, then you take the action that is necessary, right? Not only that, I don't know if you agree with me on this, but I've noticed that the more I'm there, the less crazy things happen as well. Now, that is a little bit, may seem strange because you may think, well, how can that be? It's almost like the vibration energy or whatever it is that we are settles the space around us as well, so you get less problems. But that can sound magical and mystical, but to me it's a good magical and mystical. It's great. It's an added bonus as far as I'm concerned.
And you brought up something, you mentioned religion, which reminded me that even though meditation might have started in the East, well, actually, it probably started when we were sitting around a campfire what were we, back in those days. But you, when we meditate, there is an energy that we feel, and that it just effulgent, and you cannot, everything is energy, everything, rocks, everything is. So what happens is that some is denser, some energy is more refined. Uh, with religion, when I was living in Chicago, um, there's so many people there, all different races, all different religions, and so if you meditated there, it wasn't quite as um people had these thoughts in the Bible, but what I'm trying to say is, so I come to Texas, which is the opposite of Chicago as far as opening up to other people and others' religions. There's more of a tightness, and it's not wrong. It's just that that's how people grew up. Okay. So Buddhism, every religion has some form of meditation.
Hmm.
And the Buddhist, of course, we know that the Hindus, the Christians, all of them, the Muslim faith, when they read the Quran, there's a form of meditation, chants.
Hmm.
So it's it is not uncommon, but it's not as allowing in some of the states where there's more rigidity. So it's okay in other parts of the world, but I've always tried to see the commonality of
Right.
religion, the center of religion, of people, of faiths, everything. But then you find your own center, and that when you go into the meditation and you get to your own center, you see that we're all the same. There's no difference.
Yeah.
We all want peace and happiness. Everybody. We want to be fed, we want to be happy, we want to have a good place to sleep,
Yeah.
but we also want to know that we are part of our tribe, the humanity. And
Right.
to me, it's one big tribe. And
Hmm.
all the separation that occurs creates havoc.
Hmm.
And I'm always curious when I connected with Andre, I was curious about how does the planets, the cosmos, how does that affect us as individuals? And so I got some enlightenment from Andre just learning about my own sign and saying, oh, so that's why Jupiter was here. And now I don't understand astrology the way Andre does, but I have enough understanding to be able to feel it and to talk about it and say, hey, what's happening? What's going on here? So,
Yeah, yeah, no, that's absolutely true. It's the astrology is like a map of our changing energy patterns and how skillful we can become at knowing what's there and then navigating through. Because, like how you said, sometimes geographically people are tighter or looser, for example. That's geographically, but within that, whether it's Texas or Chicago, you'll find tight people in Chicago and relaxed people in Texas too. You know, a person can figure out how to get around that, but the idea is to not let yourself get tight. That would be Saturn becoming more deranged. The planets and signs are like a frequency range, and the task is to try to express it in the finest possible place and stay away from the corruption of the planet. Obviously, like for example, everyone is familiar with what our current president is doing. He shows you the corruption of all the planets, especially Neptune, which Neptune is in the same sphere as it's sort of like the next level of Jupiter in a way for spirituality. At the high end, it's that peaceful state of equanimity that you feel, which is your true self. But once it starts descending and going out into the outer world, at the very bottom, it's all the con men and liars and thieves, people they're finding their own joy through stealing from you and through lying to you and so on. That's not the way to do it. That'll have karmic consequences because then people will lie to you. If you rob someone will rob you. It's not a good plan. The whole idea is go to the high end, uh, but in full agreement with you around how there's commonality in all the teachings, and this is where, for instance, you said I started with a mantra. Nah, that isn't quite right. Then you find maybe a different mantra or a different technique. Or I've noticed in me, for example, it's like they're like spiritual moods. There are points where I use a mantra, and there are points where just breath does it. And there are even meditations where I'm doing absolutely nothing. I'm just there in the present moment. There's no technique. And this is actually, believe it or not, it's the technique of doing nothing, right? Where you literally, if your mind tries to do anything, you say, no, just come back here, Just be with your body and mind where it is here. That at first can be more difficult, but if you're practicing all the time, it's like someone that, for instance, someone who's very familiar with gym equipment when you're doing physical exercise, they're much less likely to be confused about a technique because they already know, oh yeah, you do it this way, you do it the other way. They don't need that much instruction. They just do it. But I think bottom line to all this, though, I don't know if you agree or not, but to me the key is if any of this strikes a person as something good and useful to do, you just got to start and keep going, and keep showing up and keep showing up. There's no substitute for that. It's that simple. That's the logic. Yeah.
Yeah. You can't just say, I'm going to meditate and I'm going to be a better person and do it for a week or, and think that you're going to be enlightened. No, that is not the purpose of meditation. The purpose is to get yourself into a calm state, happy state. What you were describing a few minutes ago was mindfulness. You're just
Mindfulness.
aware of, you take a walk down through a park and you become aware of the tree. You're just like, you don't label anything, you're just there. So that's kind of what you were talking about, and mindfulness seems to be a big thing these days too. Uh, but for example, when you're given a mantra, the mantra should really, I know a lot of people have mantras that have a meaning, but if you say, for example, my mantra is tree, then your mind in that meditation state starts to have thoughts. Well, what kind of tree? Is it uh, is it a palm tree? Is it a maple? What kind of tree is it? And you start to discriminate. That's not the point you want to do. You don't want to do that. You want to keep just letting go of those thoughts, bring it back. Don't have a mantra that has like, oh, I have to, because you're going to get back into thoughts again. So,
Correct.
and then people think, like at the prison just yesterday, I was teaching, and there was a new guy that came in, and um, he thought he was one of many people think this that he closed his eyes and he says, "How come I'm not? My mind doesn't go blank?" Well, as I said earlier, we're human beings, but you can slow it and you can, let those thoughts go. And then what you discover is it could be just a split second, a moment of total peace, total silence. A lot of power in that, just like there's a lot of power in an atom, you know? You
Yeah.
have, there's so much power in it. So it just depends on where do you put your attention.
Yeah. Exactly. That's the thing that this I realized many years after meditating. Well, by many, I don't know, maybe more than 5 for sure, possibly 10, when my mind realized, my Catholic upbringing, how in the Catholic religion, there are all these rules and different things, but the essence is, and I remember, the prayer and the rosary, you have like in the Eastern religion is the mala beads, so you go through, and so it would be a prayer to the Virgin Mary or a prayer to whatever. There's a prayer. And prayers are like mantras. So you're just repeating. Well, if your mind is on that, it can't be on your troubles. In fact, in the Catholic religion, they say, give it to Jesus, give it to the mantra, give it to the prayer. That means your focus is on that and not on what is not working in your life, let's say, right? But then the next step is to realize this will probably help me with that in some way. It's a leap of faith, so to speak. And what you say is totally true about, in a case like that, maybe your mind is wondering about the Virgin Mary or Jesus, but that's a better focus than, for example, what kind of a tree is it? Or like they used to say in neurolinguistic programming, they said, if you say to a person, don't think of a blue tree, that's what they'll think of because it's automatic, right? So that's why in transcendental meditation, they give, supposedly, the mantras have no meaning so that your mind has no place to go with that. But it really doesn't matter as long as you keep your focus. Keep your focus, which in astrology is high-end Saturn. Saturn is the energy of contraction. The greatest thing you can do with contraction is focus, which, by the way, that's also why it's the work planet. If you have to work, you have to focus. You bring your mind in, right? And the result is Jupiter, which is the expansion part of your life, whether it's mental or material. It's important to keep these things in mind. Otherwise, you can lose the motivation. You can think, it's just another thing and it's not really helping me. It's not that. Actually, no, it's possibly the only thing you can do. That's how radical it is, you know. And then what you said is also totally true. Once you feel the true Jupiter, it's, you could almost say we're not just one tribe, we're all one being. Literally, everything is one being. Everything. Like, this is the idea how they tell you in religion. God is everything and everywhere. It's totally true, yes. But you got to take that literally. No, it's not a, otherwise, then there's separation, right? It's me, you, everyone is out to get everyone, it becomes more painful, quite literally, life is more difficult.
Yeah, and you know what? Years ago, back in the 90s, there was something called the a Council for Parliament of the World Religions that I joined to participate in this global event where spiritual leaders from all around the planet came to Chicago to celebrate that 100th year. 1893, it was Swami Vivekananda was the keynote speaker. In 1990, or I'm sorry, 1893, Swami Vivekananda was keynote. This time, 1993, it was the Dalai Lama
Mm,
that the keynote. And I had an opportunity to meet him a couple of times. But that he had that of effulgent energy as well. And you
mm,
can feel it. You can, but when you're meditating, when you come into alignment, things happen, synchronicity occurs.
mm,
So I happen to be standing at the right place that happens to me throughout my life, at the right place, the right time. And the Dalai Lama, he had this entourage of the limousines, and the windows were dark. You couldn't see through. But when he came right in front of me, I just happened to be doing in Tashadelek in Tibetan means it's like their greeting. And I was doing that. He rolls the window down. I didn't know he was sitting right next to me there in the car. And here he was, big smiling face. And I'm telling you, it's just a beautiful feeling when those things happen, when you're in synchronicity, you're in alignment, things happen. You meet the right people, you lose your job the next day, you wake up and you happen to run into somebody that here's your job. That's the way the world works. But
right.
most of us are too busy to get that. Um,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, yeah, it's just like I called myself the Forrest Gump of the spiritual world in a way because there was my favorite restaurant in Chicago, a Greek restaurant. I happened to be walking out just as the torch was being passed. I didn't even know it was going through Chicago at that time, but those things occur. So, and my prison, the possibility of teaching in the prison had been in my head back there for a while because I know that part of our population really needs this and could benefit greatly from these practices, which would not only help the inmate, the individual, but it could also spread, have a ripple effect throughout the prison. And even the guards, I gave the warden yesterday a copy of my book. And he wanted me to let him, read it. I have a gift for you, so I gave it to him. And so it's the word is getting around there, and now they want me to come more often, and because it's working, they know it's working.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's fascinating that these are astrology correspondences that, if you're into astrology, in a way they're like seeing synchronicities, how you put it. You see these correlations. Pisces is the place of one of the things, because signs and planets they connect to many things, and that's the whole learning of astrology, is to discover all these things that they rule. Well, Pisces is where you go to meditate and pray, or do retreats, or go into seclusion, but it's the place of hospitals, monasteries, and prisons, right? So, because a monastery would be you go to illuminate yourself, whether you join the monastery or you assume some aspect of that life for yourself, you're going into that inner space. A prison, you go there maybe against your will, but it's because society's trying to correct you from, in other words, what you've done is you've expressed the bottom end of that house, and then you need to be punished or you need to be isolated, as a thing. But you're bringing the meditation into the prison, which is a particularly interesting aspect of that, because it's really benign. I mean, when you think of punishment, you put the person there, they've done something. The only way that person would ever, reach, like apparently Nelson Mandela, when he was isolated in prison, his spiritual life really flourished, because being by himself, he was able to enter into that space. Well, if a person has done something awful, they probably won't do it on their own. They'll probably continue with the same vibe. But if they're taught to go within, they have a chance, to realize, wow, that was not a good thing to do, and they can reform themselves in a true way. So, my feeling would be that I would make meditation compulsory if in prisons. It would be like, you're going to do it whether you like it or not. We're all going to have meditation practice, and you're in prison anyway. So, I would build it up and have at least an hour a day or more, to really help people to transform themselves, as a result. Yeah.
Absolutely. Some of the spiritual people I've met are these guys, these inmates. Some of them, they come to my class because they're attracted to finding a way to get that freedom is found within.
Right.
That's the idea, is that you can be anywhere. You could be in a war zone. You could be anywhere and meditate and find that peace within, if you know how to stop the mind from and the fears and all the emotional things that are going on throughout the body, the adrenaline rushes, all of that,
Yeah, that's
you can
totally
still
true.
find
Totally true. I
peace.
remember, I had a memory just now of my early years when I was taking the bus quite a bit, and I had learned to meditate enough that I'd be on the bus surrounded by people, and the bus wasn't necessarily all that comfortable, because sometimes it was hot. You could hear the engine, but I knew how to go inside so that it felt like it was kind of another world. It was there, but I was not being affected in like an irritating way. It was just, yes, that's happening, no problem. I'm in this place that I can go to using my meditation, and that, to me, those are things that they impress our mind. You know how you said earlier, people have impressions that can really haunt them. They may have something that happened, and then they remain bitter because they keep focusing. The thing keeps coming up. But if the impression is from meditative spaces, it really teaches you. It tells you, you can let go. You can just go into this other place, and they're both in the same world, but yet you're in this place where you're not being affected by all the hustle and the bustle and the worry and all that. And not just that. I mean, it's not just like a little thing you do to escape for a bit. It has much bigger consequences and effects, so that, say, someone in a prison can literally transform their criminal energy into good citizen energy. That would be something I would say with confidence over a period of time, obviously,
Yeah.
depending on how lucky they are, and many things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I have learned not to judge, not to blame anybody, and I'm trying to teach them as well, as find that divinity within yourself. Do not, you are worthy because you're born, you're on this planet. We're all worthy. It's us that block ourselves from thinking, oh, I can't do this, I don't know that. We all have the possibilities of doing great things, or just raising our families and doing the best we can in life. Um, but it's when we get uh, off balance and stuck in some machinations of the mind that creates the havoc, that creates all the, you know, the
Yeah.
chaos.
Yeah.
So
Makes a lot of
things are
sense.
happening now all around the world. We know that. If you turn on the news, you're going to see it. But we can also choose, make choices for us. Well, do we want to watch all that all day long, or do we want to find 30 minutes out of our 20 minutes, 10 minutes to meditate? It doesn't have to be 2 hours at a time.
Right.
It could be just a very quick, short meditation, but you'll notice right away, the more you do it, the more you become adept at finding that space and getting there and then being able to just let that go. It's not gonna, it's gonna, the world is here. Things happen. And so, but it's how we react to these things that happen that create chaos within our minds.
So would you agree that, would you agree that to get started, I mean, a person may have a very specific thing they're doing, in which case maybe they just do that. But if you said as a broad, you know, practice to start, and something like some minimum amount, 10 minutes, some number that you'll stick to, and even if it's have it so that even if you don't have any energy to sit up straight or anything like that, you just lie on the floor, make it as easy as possible, so that you will make sure you show up and go from there. And if you keep doing this day after day after day, you're guaranteeing that eventually it'll become your practice in some way. Do you understand it more or less like that?
Yeah, it becomes kind of like almost like a craving. You can meditate 10 minutes a day. There's no problem with doing that, and that will be better than no minutes a day. So
Mm-hmm.
think of it that way. Like if it's just a few minutes, we got 10 minutes, most of us, even no matter how busy we are, we have time to do other things. So put in that important 5, 10 minutes, 20, 15 minutes, 20, whatever you can, at least once a day, I would say. Like I said, I did it twice a day for 20 or 30 years. And I couldn't have done all the things I have done in my life without having these practices. They're so valuable. I can't even begin to tell you how they have really changed my life and helped me to become a better person and to help others because we're born to serve.
So, what do you think now? Because we're just about at an hour, and as a final thought, what comes to me is, what's your sense of how this could help in the current political situation? We pretty much can assume that everyone or nearly everyone watching this is not happy with the current situation here, and really the whole world right now is in a lot of turmoil. Although a lot of it is being caused by the American president. But what's your sense of how would it imagine a situation where, this is my theory, that if Democrats in this case, the people that are trying to adapt to this and hopefully restore it back to a better place, if more and more of those people do some form of meditation, some kind of pacifying, going within, connecting with that space, how would you think that would improve things for the quest to return to what we need to return to? Because my feeling is it would really help a lot.
Question. Well, I will quote what the Dalai Lama said that if every 8-year-old learned how to meditate and practice meditation, there would around the world, there would be no more wars. There would be peace
Right. Yeah.
because we are all interconnected. We can't help it on the spiritual plane. All of us are, whether we fight about our ideology or this one believes that or that religion is the best and the only one, all that stuff is doesn't matter in the real sense. It's about each individual doing their part to assist uplifting humanity, but it starts within, starts with each individual. And then once we all begin to feel the power of this and the enjoyment of peace and tranquility, the more that we want others to experience it. That's why I've been teaching for as long as I have, and because it has helped me so much. I'm not a perfect human being. Who is? I mean, but I still have to learn. I'm still alive. I'm still embodied, and I still have to deal with the world and the things around me. But I have a place to go to shift my attention, to shift my energy, and to allow that higher vibration and frequencies. That's what it's about, is trying to get yourself into that higher, lighter frequency and to resonate with others around you too, or try to find that place.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And my feeling is that the more people do this, in the sense of changing conditions in the world to a better place, the reason that works is that when you're in that state, you always make better decisions. You always know what to do. Uh, so, for instance, you're probably going to vote for sure because you know that if you don't vote, how are we going to change this? And some people will say, I'm giving up. This is, it can never work. That probably isn't a good idea. Or you may do some other thing to move the situation forward, but it increases the chances of transforming life in a more positive way, right? That's how I see it, even beyond saying you're finding more peace of mind so you can feel better. It affects the world. The Dalai Lama affects the world through his presence, through his spiritual energy. In fact, some people claim, and I probably would agree, I mean, this makes sense to me, that it's because of great spiritual minds that are alive that the world continues to exist. We probably would have blown it up already by now. But those energies are really helpful in spreading enough equanimity that we don't get, we're not in perpetual war, even though there's plenty of that as well, right? So, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. And yes,
Right.
uh, everyone remember, show your book again.
It is called Get an Inner Life, Meditate, published by Balboa Press and Hay House. And you can find it on Amazon or Barnes and Noble. I think you have to order it from there. But Andre, you're going to be getting one of these, by the way.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you. All right.
but
Well,
thank you so much. And
all
I
right.
love participating in this with you.
Likewise. It was great. All right. We'll say goodbye to her. Bye, everyone, for now.